Ladies and gentlemen, this episode of Raw was straight garbage, okay? Let's just be real with it. There is one thing that happened on this episode. Actually, there may be like one or two things that I actually thought were genuinely good to even great. However, outside of those things, this was a disaster. Now, I will say, at least this Raw has something that I can say is good, that I liked. You know, AJ Styles and Dragano Lee, bro. My boy Dragano Lee, man. Dragon Lee is officially one of, if not my favorite jobber in WWE. You know, out of all the undercard guys, the mid-card jobbers, I think that Dragon Lee is probably my favorite at this moment. You know what I mean? He just puts on great matches. He brings his energy, and he's a very entertaining guy to watch. You know what I mean? Now, hopefully, he can learn how to cut some promos or, you know, maybe tell some stories. But as far as what he's doing, which is just being a jobber to put on good matches, he does it pretty much as good as anyone else, if not the best. So I like Dragon Lee. He's pretty awesome. And him with AJ Styles, I think, is great because AJ Styles is probably his last title win, probably for, I think, the rest of his WWE career. This is probably it. So we'll see what happens with that. But outside of that, this show was garbage. You get what I mean? Like, we first off have to acknowledge one thing. Seth Rollins is officially injured with his shoulder, and he's allegedly going to be out possibly through the remainder of the Mania 42 season and throughout the Mania 42 show, so he might miss WrestleMania. This is unacceptable. I've seen people say he's unlucky and all these things, but I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And obviously, you guys know, Seth is one of my favorite wrestlers, but the booking of him in the Vision has been a disaster, okay? It has been awful. It's been awful. I've been advocating for Seth to get better booking for like a year at this point, it feels like. But the bottom line is that Triple Fraud, who doesn't even show up backstage anymore, there's been multiple reports about it, he doesn't show up to work anymore, so that's not even a factor. But at the end of the day, Triple H has not been able to book this dude good at all. The writers, whoever you want to, because you can't even blame Triple H. They're trying to say you can't blame AI, which WWE has used apparently. You can't blame Road Dogg. You can't blame the writers backstage. I don't know who you can blame for this. You know what I'm saying? No one takes accountability for the garbage that we get every single week. So I don't know who to blame at this point. But no matter what happens, Triple Fraud, you know what I'm saying? It's who we're going to blame, okay? He is responsible for Seth Rollins being booked like an absolute jobber, and nobody finds this interesting anymore. At the end of the day, when Rollins was announced tonight that he was going to relinquish his championship, there was an audible amount of cheers in the audience. Do you understand how bad that things have to get in order for you to relinquish your title due to injury and fans are cheering? Do you understand? Like, this is bad, bro. It's getting bad. Even if you're a top heel, like if Roman Reigns had to relinquish his championship in 2022 or 2023, fans would not be happy with that at all. They would not be cheering after he relinquishes his championship. But because Seth Rollins' reign has been so bad, because the Vision has been so bad, now he's getting cheered that he's losing the belt, that he has to relinquish it. And unfortunately, the injury he got was from the coast to coast he did versus Cody Rhodes, you know what I'm saying, at Crown Jewel, where he just jumped randomly like 20 feet in the air and landed on his shoulder. I don't know what else he was going to land on. It just looked like a dumb move to do. It was a stupid move, and he got injured off of it. It's as simple as that. Seth Rollins has potentially ruined the main event scene of Monday Night Raw for the foreseeable future and possibly for Mania as well because of a stupid move that he should have never done. I hate to be that guy, but Seth Rollins should never be jumping 20 feet in the air to hit a coast-to-coast. What was the point of this? What, he lands his head on Cody's shoulder, and then what? What happens to his arms? There was no thought put into this move. Unless there was some crazy way he was going to hit it, it doesn't make sense, and it was a dumb move to even try to attempt. There's too much on the line. I think he's over 40 years old now. That's not a move that you need to be doing. It's egregiously ridiculous that he even tried to do that move, and now because of it, he's gotten injured, and he hurt his shoulder, and now he's going to be out, unfortunately. Hopefully, he has a speedy recovery and gets back nice and healthy, maybe for Mania season, but the move that he got injured on, I've seen people say he's unlucky. No, that was a stupid move, and he should have never done it, and anybody who watched it should know that by now. Be honest about it. Secondly, Bron Breaker, this is not going to work. I'm going to ask you right now, what do you think, what about Bron Breaker makes you think that this push that they're going to give him is going to actually make him a main event level superstar in WWE that will carry the next generation of professional wrestling? Thank you. Let's just get that out of the way because there's nothing there. The more you think about it, there's really nothing there. Yes, he is a freak athlete. I get that. But do you know how many freak athletes there are in WWE? You know what I'm saying? There's a bunch of amazing athletes in WWE. A lot of these dudes can do a bunch of flips, a bunch of dives, great selling, super athletic moves off the top rope, off the bottom. They're super strong. You know what I'm saying? They have that. Okay, you get what I mean? And Bron Breaker is not one of the biggest dudes. You know what I mean? One of the things that I didn't understand about Paul Heyman and this new faction, Bron Breaker and Bronson Reed, there's something visually about them being the same size basically as Paul Heyman that just doesn't work. You know what I mean? At least when Paul's standing next to Roman or he's standing next to Brock, they're like noticeably bigger than him, right? And it makes it feel like Paul's just like a useful sidekick. But when Paul is like the same size as these dudes, they're not going to be believable future Mania main events are actual beasts. Nobody's afraid of Bronson Reed. You know what I'm saying? You look at Roman Reigns in the ring with Brunson and Bron Breaker, and it's like, this is a joke. This is an absolute joke. Which one of these, how are people afraid of these dudes? It's ridiculous at this point, okay? You look at any other young person, when you know what I'm saying, when they are becoming stars, like a young Randall Orton, or a young Brock Lesnar, or a young Batista, you know what I mean? You just can tell that they had some type of presence to them. Bron Breaker gets out of the car and that with that world championship and Bronson Reed and Paul Heyman, and you feel nothing, or at least I felt nothing. It feels like a manufactured push, and the fact that Bron Breaker is the automatically chosen superstar to be the next top guy is just embarrassing. Like the fact that people like a Melo Hayes or even a Trick Williams just aren't even considered to be a next top star, the next top star, is just embarrassing. Trick Williams is more charismatic than Bron Breaker. He is bigger than Bron Breaker, which adds to the appeal of the whole situation. You know what I'm saying? Visually, when you're watching these wrestlers go out there, you want to believe that the top star is imposing and it is more physically dominant than their opponent. Trick Williams is bigger than him. He obviously, appears to be stronger than Bron Breaker. He's super athletic. He cuts better promos. He's more charismatic, and he's over. I don't know how Trick Williams is not on the main roster yet, but Bron Breaker, can you tell me one great story he's told since coming to the main roster? How about one great promo? You know what I'm saying? How about a multitude of amazing matches he's had this year? You can't answer any of those questions, yet he's being pushed to potentially be a main eventer? None of this makes sense. And you can even try and use the excuse of, remember Roman Reigns wasn't the best when he started off, man, but, they have to give him time. We don't have time. This company is experiencing record low viewership. If they experience this record low viewership and record low quality for the foreseeable future, they're not going to make it another 5 years to figure things out with Bron Breaker. You get what I mean? And even Roman Reigns and Rollins and Dean Ambrose, they were in the Shield and they showed flashes of being great for a couple years. And then when Roman's first year of his singles face run, I thought was honestly pretty solid. He was obviously really bad on the mic, but in terms of just overall, his portrayal, you know what I'm saying, his delivery, the presentation, and his in-ring moves and stuff like that in his matches, he did a solid job. He had a great match with Lesnar at Mania 31, I think, in the main event of Mania 31, I believe it was. Yeah, Mania 31, that's what it was. It was a really good match in my opinion. So he had at least shown flashes, and you knew that eventually Roman was going to break through and become a superstar. And of course, he gave us 5 years payoff of amazingness, you know what I'm saying, in return for the 3 or 4 years of trash that he gave us. So not really that he gave us, but it's really the booking, you know what I'm saying, and Vincent McMahon. But that's the deal with that. But this thing with Bron Breaker, he's proven nothing and he's getting pushed. It just doesn't work. He gets out of the car, it doesn't work. Nothing about this makes any sense. And unlike other people, you know what I'm saying, who actually may have deserved a push on the line, Bron Breaker has not done anything to deserve this, and we know it. Okay, we know it. Bron Breaker doesn't have it. It's clear, and he isn't even talking. They know that he doesn't have it because he's not even talking in the ring. They have Heyman basically cut 85% of the promo. Bron Breaker says a couple one-liners to Pierce that come off as corny and just not entertaining or not convincing at all. And he's just not scary. Nobody sees Bron Breaker as scary. You get what I'm saying? Like when Roman Reigns came back during COVID and he was literally wrecking everyone and leaving, spearing people through barricades, power bombing people outside of the ring. Remember when he grabbed Dominic Mysterio and power bombed him over the top rope outside of the ring? He was a savage. He was beating top heels and top faces. He was beating everybody. You get me? So that actually made sense. He felt like a legitimate threat with Paul Heyman at his side too, and the Usos. Everything worked together to make the bloodline feel threatening. Nothing about Bronito Breaker and Bronsinho Reed and Paulithan Hamilton. Nothing about that is convincingly to convince you that they're scary. Nobody's scared of this at all. Let's be honest with ourselves. And he doesn't look right with the belt. It just, listen, when you think of the world title, you're like, yeah, man, I think of Batista or an Edge maybe and stuff like that. Even Randall Orton looked good with the big gold belt. This just doesn't look good. It doesn't fit. It almost looks like it's too big on him to an extent, if I'm being honest with you. So overall, and we have to stop with all of this nonsense with the future Mania main eventer. This is the future, because Paul Heyman basically says that, because Seth Rollins, got injured, you know what I'm saying, Bron Breaker and Bronson Reed had the courage and the intensity to beat the crap out of Seth Rollins. And I'm just sitting here like, okay, and then Heyman says for the 50th time this year, basically saying that Bronson Reed and Bron Breaker are future WrestleMania main events. We all know this isn't true, guys. We all know this. Bron Breaker may main event this next Mania because Rollins won't be there, Cena won't be there, there's probably going to be no Rock, you know what I mean? And so Roman will likely have to rematch Cody for the third time, or maybe he'll fight Punk for the WWE title or something like that. So maybe he'll get a night 1 slot, but Bron Breaker main eventing night 2 of any of these Manias is not happening. And you can't convince us that Bronson Reed, who has been a mid-card jobber for 90% of his main roster time, and Bron Breaker, who has been a mid-carder for 98% of his time on this roster, on the main roster, you cannot convince me that these dudes are randomly going to become main eventers because they double-teamed a Seth Rollins who was injured. This doesn't, like, none of this makes sense. It's not believable. You have to stop throwing these names out, because then we're going to start comparing you to multiple time Mania main eventers like a Romano or like a Cena or even someone like a Codarius Rodington, who it's crazy. Can you think about that? Stardust is a perennial now WrestleMania main eventer in this current landscape of WWE. That is sad, but it is an absolute reality at this point. However, that is the deal. You have to stop saying these things. Every time you have to, I've said this a lot in my earlier YouTube videos. You know, this is something I have to consistently talk about. It was one of my main talking points, was the fact that WWE has this tendency in recent memory, like the last year or two, to start saying things about people that are just not true, but they say it so much that people just start to believe in the lie. And one of the examples I would bring up is Codarius Rodington himself. He would come out every single week, and despite cutting the same promo, I respect you, I love you, I care for you, and Wheatley so good I drink it neatly, you know what I'm saying, and all that nonsense, and I can't stop thinking about and I can't stop thinking about Randy. But still, that has nothing to do with anything. What I'm talking about is that Cody Rhodes would come out and Michael Cole and all the commentators would be like, Cody Rhodes really is the QB1. He has the North Star of the wrestling industry. They're talking about the industry as a whole, and they're saying that he's a fighting champion. And I'm like, last year in 2024, he may have had like 5 or 6 championship defenses. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was not far off. It may have been 7 if we're being max. It was maybe 7, possibly that, or 6 or something like that. It's like five championship matches, or however many championship matches it was. There wasn't many of them. And despite that, they were calling him a fighting champion when he wasn't wrestling. Gunther, it's the same thing. They were calling him a fighting champion and saying the ring is, what's called, he's the ring general. The mat is sacred. That same mat that he tapped out to Jey Uso on. The same mat that he fought a commentator, Patrick McAfee, on. You get what I mean? They're calling him the ring general. He barely wrestles. He doesn't tell any good stories. Cody Rhodes is drastically just diminishing the quality of the main event scene on SmackDown, and they're continuously calling him great. As things get worse, the commentators and Triple Fraud have these people trying to tell you how great everything is. And it's absolutely ridiculous. It makes no sense. And obviously, you see the dividends pay of it in the worst way possible. Now you're getting record low viewership on Raw and SmackDown, and all of a sudden you notice on the commentary, they ain't calling Cody Rhodes the QB1 no more. They ain't calling him the North Star no more. They ain't calling Gunther nothing anymore, you know, after he tapped out the Jey Uso. So it's a disaster. When you call people things that they're not, they're going to start comparing them to other people who are in the same bracket that are doing things like Mania main events multiple different times. And if you actually talk about it for in a real sense, Roman Reigns, like I've been saying, is the last superstar in all professional wrestling. But the more that they try and force Bron Breaker on us, it's going to be a similar 2015 to 2016 situation with Romano, and it's not going to work. Like I said, you're in record low status right now. You don't have another 2 or 3 years of this quality to somehow pull out of the dumps, and like you had Roman Reigns come in and win the belt and had the title for 4 or 5 years, and you got pulled out of the dumps. You don't have that coming anywhere soon, coming anytime soon. So it's wraps. This whole vision, I don't even care what happened in this segment. Paul Heyman called Seth Rollins a broken shoulder B-word. Nobody cares. This faction is full of jobbers. Everything you see on this show is full of jobbers. The Battle Royal, Tozawa's in the Battle Royal, Otis is in the Battle Royal. You have a bunch of other jobbers in the Battle Royal. There's just no depth. And when Roman Reigns, when they were trying to figure things out with him, at least they had other top mid-card or somewhat, upper card guys like a Dean Ambrose or a Rollins, and Randy was still around. Cena was part-timing it. You had Bray Wyatt, who was a pretty solid, wrestler. Rest in peace, obviously, but yeah, we had Bray Wyatt, who was a pretty solid wrestler as well. There was things that were actually going on where they were actually trying things out with different people, and some of the stuff was landing and some of it wasn't. Yeah, the Women's Revolution, that was becoming a bigger thing as well. They had things to lean back on in the mid-2010s at least, and to make these shows off of. What do you have now that Rollins isn't on Raw? Roman's part-time. Punk's waiting a couple weeks, I guess, to fight for the title. Gunther's not even there. Gunther sucks anyway, so that's not even a problem. But still, he's not even there. You have nothing. You literally have absolutely nothing. So I'm not convinced on Bron Breakker at all. I don't believe in him to be the next top star. I think they need to try it out with Trick Williams or someone else, because this is not going to work. And Bronson Reed beating Roman Reigns just to become a lackey to Bron Breakker makes no sense. It's absolutely stupid, and it's honestly kind of disrespectful to Bronson Reed. I'm sure he probably feels that way behind the scenes, but we'll only see what happens, I guess, in the coming months. And then obviously, after this ends, Adam Pearce has to ask nicely for Bron Breakker to relinquish the championship and to give it over. And that's basically it. I don't know what else to say about this. This opening segment was boring, and it proved to me that Bronito Breakker is not the guy going forward, in my opinion. So that's basically that. And I want to take a second to highlight this #1 contenders for the World Heavyweight Championship Battle Royal that was announced, in this segment. It was announced that it was going to happen later on in the night. And I just want to go through these names, okay, for the main event of a Raw, a Battle Royal for the #1 contenders for a World Heavyweight Championship. Just listen to these competitors. I took a photo of this on my phone while the broadcast was going. We had Rusev, Ivar, Grayson Waller, Kofi Kingston, Dominic Mysterio, Finn Balor, Jobber, JD McDonald's, Jobber, Akira Tozawa, Jobber, Otis, Jobber, Grande Americano Latte from Starbucks, Jobber, Penta, Jobber, Jey Uso, mid-card Jobber, but he is in the main event scene now, so I guess he gets a pass. Jimmy Uso, Jobber, LA Knight, as much as I like him, he right now is a Jobber. And then you had AJ Styles and Dragano Lee and Sheamus. What are we doing at this point? How many of those people that I just named are at least the age of like 38 to 40 years old, way over that, okay? And the person won it was Jey Uso, who's dang near 40, I believe, fighting Punk, who's a few years away from 50. They have no younger stars. And the younger stars they have now, they're trying to force a push to get Bron Breaker and Brunson Reed like it's not going to work, man. This is a disaster class. How in the world, if you rewinded 10 years ago to a random battle royal for like the Intercontinental title, you would see some of these names, like a Kofi Kingston or a Finn Balor or a Sheamus or a Rusev or an AJ Styles. But now you look at this, and even the Usos would be in there possibly as well. And now you fast forward a decade and they're still fighting for the world title? Like, it's just, that shows me how little has been done or developed in the last 5 to 10 years with a lot of these stars and with a lot of this roster. It's sad, it's embarrassing, and it's important to highlight the jobbery that takes place on this piece of trash show. We then had an amazing championship match for the tag team championships that are barely ever defended or featured on Raw. This match was really good. It was a classic, great, hard-hitting, fast-paced action match with AJ Styles, Dragano Lee, my boy, you know what I'm saying? My boy, Dragon Lee, you know what I mean? I like Dragon Lee, okay? And then JD McDonald's and, and Phineas Balor, they fought together for the tag belts. This was a good match, man. It did exactly what it needed to do. It didn't overstay its welcome. It had good drama, good false finishes, great athleticism, really good selling from JD McDonald's and Dragano. This was entertaining, man. I don't know what else to say. You know what I'm saying? I actually sat down and watched the entirety of this match, and I enjoyed myself in every single minute of it. It was pretty well booked, and I thought that the ending, actually having a title change for these jobbers in the Judgment Day, I thought that was pretty cool as well. And it's good to see AJ Styles in a feel-good moment winning a championship on his way out the door because he's going to retire next year. So I thought everything about this worked. This was a good match. I enjoyed it. The next thing we have was Dominic Mysterio versus Rusev. This is the same match we got the last time they fought. Dominic puts the hammer in his boot. Rusev counters. Dominic distracts the ref, then hits Rusev with a low blow. It makes no sense that the ref had no problem with Dominic having a hammer in his boot, but then when Rusev tried to take the hammer out and tried to use it, the ref all of a sudden had a problem with it. It's really dumb. It's stupidly booked. Penta and Rusev are now going to feud for a few weeks, and then one of them will go back to fighting Dominic or Cena, whoever wins the Intercontinental Championship. But Dominic retains in the dirty Dominic way, and I guess he has to hold the championship until he eventually fights Jonathan Cena either at Survivor Series or on an upcoming episode of Monday Night Raw. So that's basically that. After this, we got Maximus Dupri versus Rebecca Lynch. This is a meaningless garbage match. Multiple botches, unacceptable. Just unacceptable botches. Maxxine Dupri, I don't know what the hype is here. She's not that good in my opinion. I don't want to call her garbage, you know what I'm saying? I don't want to be mean, but you know what? Listen, her in-ring wrestling tonight, it was trash. You know what I'm saying? It's been bad now for many, many months, and we know the history of this, so I don't want to rehash it all. But this has been pretty bad. I mean, it really is. She doesn't look like she understands, how to time the moves correctly. The selling is really bad, and unfortunately, you know what I'm saying, Maxxine Dupri just isn't believable. You know what I'm saying? All the underdog stuff, it only works when the underdog actually gets better and develops into a point where they actually deserve to win a title, and this just isn't happening with Maxxine. We've been trying this for 2 years now. I haven't seen any, tremendous growth, you know what I mean? At least to the point where she, 2 years ago, let's just say she was an undercard jobber, because she was. If she's an undercard jobber 2 years ago, she should at least be a mid-carder or upper-carder by now. Part of that is the booking, but part of that is the fact that she just hasn't developed enough to that extent to be anything other than an undercard jobber who wrestles 5 matches on TV a year. And I'm just being honest with you. I mean, it is what it is. Doesn't mean that she can't get better in the future, but if her contract is coming up and it's going to run out, then you know what? They might release her. I don't know. And then I think after this, we got Roxanne Perez versus Stephanie Vaquer. I didn't even watch this match because, like I told you, I haven't watched a full Raw or SmackDown since January, so I just skipped through and saw the segments for the rest of this garbage. You know what I'm saying? What's her name? Roxanne Perez lost to Stephanie Vaquer. Stephanie gets beat up afterwards, and then Nikki Bella comes back and returns. I assume this is going to mean that Nikki Bella will probably get a shot at Stephanie Vaquer's world title in the near future, but who cares? Let's move on. Becky Lynch had a backstage segment with Paul Heyman and basically said that Seth Rollins was using him, and he knew that Heyman was going to turn on him at some point because he didn't trust him, and yada, yada, yada. Basically, when Seth comes back, he's going to beat up whoever Heyman is siding with. So I don't know, whatever. I don't know what to say about this. Let's just move on. And then the main event was a battle royal full of jobbers, and Jay Yeetmaster ended up winning it after eliminating his brother and eliminating LA Knight, and then eliminating Dominic Mysterio to go ahead and get the dub. Now it's him versus Punk at Saturday Night Main Event for the World Heavyweight Championship. There's probably a very strong possibility that this championship is basically just going to be handed over to Punk. He's going to probably win this match at Saturday Night's Main Event, but there is the outside shot that maybe Roman returns and helps Jay win the world title and maybe sets up a feud with him and Jey Uso down the line. I don't know. I don't really care. The ending of this show was an absolute wash, and it doesn't matter. Kodarius Rodington, Seth Rollins, whatever. CM Punk versus Jey Uso is not something I care about, and it's not something that I'm sure many people are going to care about. Let's just put the title on Punk and give him a rightful world championship reign, and let's see where it goes from there. Would have been great to have LA Knight maybe win this, but let's be honest, he's never winning a world title, so it is what it is. Triple H just can't stand the guy and will never book him the way he should be. This show gets a solid 2 out of 10 at best. It was pretty garbage as per usual, but at least it wasn't a 0. I don't know. Anyways, this show was trash. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section below. As always, I thank you guys so much for watching. Have a phenomenal day. Peace out and one love.